So now I'm thinking about that first trip that you and F.A. Lamb took me and John on. Or his son was John. I don't know how old we were, probably 8 or 9 years old. And you took us down to Oklahoma. We stayed in this guy's place called Red's.
Right. And that was his, and as Red owned a resort area down there, and he used to work for Phillips, so he knew all the guys down there and FA, and there was people there. And we ended up going down there and taking you and John with us on this one trip. And it turned out to be, the first day turned out to be quite a day, because John couldn't last longer than 5 or 10 minutes fishing, and then he had to do something. He was in trouble all the time with FA was yelling at him, and you would fish, but you were a little more quiet than John was.
4 of us in a boat that we rented.
We're
boat fishing on this river down below the Grand Lake.
Yes.
And we're trying to catch white bass, right?
That's right.
So we're trolling. Sometimes we stopped and
then we
jigged a little bit.
Jigged, and then we did everything else. And then then both of you got tired of fishing. And
so I remember all the rules.
Yes.
You know, you couldn't stand up in the boat.
No, you couldn't stand up in the boat, and you couldn't make a bunch of noise because you'd scare the fish away.
And I remember, like, you got to set the hook to catch the fish.
Right.
And then sometimes I'd pull it out of its mouth, and I'm setting the hook too hard. and then I remember when we were trolling, we're trying 4 of us
trolling with
2 rods straight out the back, 2 way out the side.
Right. And
about every so often we'd get tangled up, remember?
That's exactly right.
Because we get to not paying attention.
Up, and then we'd have to reel in, and then we'd have to unwind the thing, and then you guys wouldn't throw your reels out right, and we'd get a bird's nest in the line, and I'd have to take your pole, and he'd have to take John's pole, and we'd have to pull out all the line and get all the knots out of it and everything else.
Yeah,
and
then I can remember.
Go again, and then, of course, you two had to go to the restroom all the time, so we'd have to pull to the bank so you could go out in the trees. And then we'd be sitting there, and then pretty soon you'd come back, and then John was pretty active young man, and he had quite a bit. FA had quite a bit of trouble getting John to settle down, and then when we'd go to the cabin at night, neither one of you wanted to go to sleep right away after we had had dinner and cleaned fish and did everything and
get a shower.
Yes,
and the one thing I remember about that shower was the little concrete room.
It was just
with the water pipes were exposed.
Were bare.
Right, bare water pipes, and if you bent over, the hot water pipe would burn your ass.
It would put a mark on you, and it would leave.
It's the first time.
It wasn't so bad that it was like branding you or anything, but it was close to it.
It was hot.
It was hot. You just had to learn to stay away from the pipes.
And we also cleaned our fish in that place too.
And Red had a fantastic fish cleaning place that, and he would. You had the water and everything else, and you learned. I had to learn how to fillet before, and so did you. I taught you how to fillet.
This is before we were using electric knives. This was all fillet knives.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And we had to learn to keep our knives sharp. We had to sharpen our knives every day because you cut through the back. The way FA made me learn was you go right behind the gill, go down the backbone, and you'd have to clip off the rib bones, and then you would throw the tail over and then get a rabbit by the tail and slice that meat off. And then you had a certain way FA taught us that you had to flip out the bones, the rib bones, and so that all you had was a real nice piece of slab of fish. no bones at all.
Yeah.
But there was one little row of bones in there that you had to learn to take that little V out of there, that thing, if you remember correctly, how we had to teach you all of that.
Yeah.
And
we did crappie that way. We did white bass that way. Those are the main two things we caught down there.
that's most of the fish we caught down there was nothing but white bass and crappie, because and there was no limit on white bass at the time.
Yeah.
And there never was.
Sometimes we'd catch hundreds of these things.
We fished down there all the time. But
go
there
when they
was
were
a limit
spawning,
on black bass, and there was a limit on crappie.
Mm-hmm.
And but we really, I mean, it was good fishing, and we made a lot of. We brought home a lot of fillets.
Yeah. I remember that the Doors had come out with their song, Jim Morrison and the Doors had come out with their song, "Come On Baby, Light My Fire."
Yes.
It was like one of the biggest hits right when we were fishing. And I made it, when we'd go through a lull and we weren't catching a fish, I'd made up, "Come on, fishy, bite my line." I'd use the same tune. "Come on, baby, light my fire." It's like, "Come on, fishy, bite my line."
You'd always try to figure
Try
out.
to set the day on fire.
You'd always try to find out scientifically how far to drop your line, what to do with your line,
Right.
and
There's got to be a way to get one every time.
Because you want to catch them fish, because you don't catch them all the time
No.
when you're going up and down the river.